serious crisis in education today because kids are too busy 6, 7 to learn how to read at their grade level.
The kids can't read, write, or remember anything or use their imaginations, and the teachers are wondering why.
They're feral, they can't read, they're crazy.
People are putting screens in front of their children instead of books.
Why do you need 2 screens?
Because they can't watch YouTube on this one.
And that is leading to not just a lack of literacy, but a lack of confidence and a great deal of anxiety.
Like, they don't know how to put things away. They don't know common decency.
Having to teach and work with you guys as children has been the most traumatic experience of my life.
Their future could be at risk if something doesn't change fast.
Gen Alpha can't read anything anymore. Do you remember the days when we were in school and we were asked to do things like read books, write essays, or really just do anything that required more than 30 seconds of thinking? Well, apparently at some point since then, we've decided that doing things like that is for losers, and we'd be better off using our time teaching kids more important things, like how to brain rot all over the place. I'm kind of joking when I say that, but not really, because I see videos like this.
Ready? Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Maybe it's just me and my silly little goofy brain, but is it crazy that kids know a dumb trend before they know how to count? Like, it's insane to me to think I could walk up to a Gen Alpha kid and they'd have a better chance of saying 6, 7 to me than actually knowing how to count to 6 or 7. But in a way, that does feel like an appropriate reflection of our time, because Gen Alpha isn't asked to read entire books or write whole essays anymore. They're asked to write paragraphs, and sometimes they can't even do that.
The younger generation is cooked. I just watched a video of a teacher trying to tell his kids that they have to write a paragraph, not an essay, 5 sentences, and they're moaning and groaning and whining away about, oh my God, I gotta write 5 sentences.
And it's not like I downed some 4-day-old bottle of Haterade and came up with all of this, but there is actual data that can empirically show this is what's happening. If we look at the NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, 40% of 4th graders are now reading below the NAEP basic level. That is the lowest possible level, by the way. And for reference, if you're reading below the basic level, that probably means you can't identify the main point of a paragraph or a character's motivations in a story. So it's pretty much the same reading level as you see on X or on Instagram threads. On top of that, for 8th graders, it's even worse. 1/3 of them are below basic, which is the highest percentage ever recorded in 32 years of testing. Then if you go to the place with the most educated, the smartest, the most genius humans of all time, if you go to the place where they're all hanging out, they will say the same thing. And of course, I'm talking about TikTok. There are a whole bunch of teachers on there who, for lack of a better word, are saying how sucky Gen Alpha is at reading and overall just comprehension in general.
It feels like teaching an entire generation of weaponized incompetence. Because what do you mean you can't just reread the directions that I strained my voice to read out loud 3 times? What do you mean you can't just look at the rubric that I made that shows you exactly how to get a grade? And I said if you even wrote a few sentences, you could get a 1, which is a D. The security guard stopped by and he was kind of like shocked at how confused the kids were. It's an alternate ending to The Outsiders. You get to do whatever you want, and you were given enough information, notice, and preparation. Now you can just sit down and write anything you want. Pony Boy does this, Johnny doesn't die, whatever you want to do. And they're just sitting there like this. And I can't help that. And so I just told him, like, you need to pick up the pencil and write. I can't help you. You need to pick up the pencil and write.
So yeah, somehow these Gen Alpha kids can navigate an iPad with an incredible amount of complexity and dexterity, but then you show them a sentence that's longer than 5 words, and their brain has to reboot. It crashes. You have to give them like 15 minutes before they can even speak again. So based off of all of that, here's the question that I have. How did we raise the first generation of kids who grew up fully online and now they can't read? Before we go any further, I want to address something. I know that every generation says that the next generation can't do something, or they're always dogging on the generation that comes after them. People say millennials killed cursive, they say Gen Z killed phone calls, Gen Alpha killed the ability to communicate normally without referencing some dumb trend that makes everyone's IQ lower. You know, it is what it is.
Skibbity toilet Riz, W Sigma. Livy Dunn rizzing up baby Gronk, while Duke Dennis is wittily gwittying outside no phantom tax on Skibbity.
But in this case, I'm not just being a boomer. Like I mentioned before with the NAEP scores, we can actually empirically see that they're getting worse at reading. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a doctorate or a PhD in looking at numbers, but this definitely does not look good. And maybe you're looking at me and you're thinking this is just a good old red-blooded American problem. Like maybe we're just too busy letting freedom ring to pick up a book and read a few words in it. Well, you'd be wrong if you thought that, because this is a global problem. The Program for International Student Assessment, or the PISA, it's a fun name, they tested 15-year-olds across dozens of countries, and they found that reading scores declined across most developed nations between 2018 and 2022. So no, this isn't just some vibes we're feeling. This isn't just some energy that's being put into the universe. This is something we can see, physically see, empirically see that is happening. Which that means at the end of the day, the question isn't if there is a literacy crisis. The question is what caused it? Here's the thing about the literacy decline that a lot of people may get wrong. It didn't start with the pandemic. I mean, sure, the pandemic made it worse. A lot worse, but the trend was already here. Reading scores have been essentially flat or declining since the early 2010s. The 2024 NAEP scores are roughly where they were in 1992. So that means in 30 years of potential progress, we actually haven't made progress. We've made regression. That's what we've done. So what changed? Well, honestly, I don't think it takes some super genius megamind to figure out what happened. Around 2012, something shifted. And here's a little video that maybe will allude, or maybe it'll give you a little hint about what that shift was.
Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. And here it is.
In 2012, teen smartphone ownership crossed the 50% threshold. By 2018, it was 95%. Who would have guessed that giving kids phones and allowing them to nomadically travel across the whole wide web world internet wouldn't be a good idea? Who would have guessed that? Not me. I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought it was good. Maybe. I don't know. And here's where things start to get a little bit more interesting. The kids who took the 2024 NAEP reading tests, they were in kindergarten when the pandemic started. Their entire literacy foundation was built during remote learning, Zoom fatigue, and reduced instructional time. So pretty much their whole literacy foundation was built on a big, massive, heaping pile of dung with a side of cornbread. So the pandemic didn't create the problem, but it did accelerate. It took trends that we saw that were already a little bit concerning, and it compressed them into a very short amount of time.
You have got to stop blaming COVID for kids not being able to read and write on grade level. Let's be clear. Kids were not reading and writing on grade level before COVID. It's just that COVID exposed how bad the educational system had become at that time. But it is not COVID's fault. Teachers have been being forced to pass kids along, give away free grades. Let's call a spade if we're going to talk about education. Don't blame COVID for decisions that the school board is making. Don't blame COVID for decisions the Department of Education is making. Okay? COVID just exposed where we are in education. Kids were not reading and writing on grade level years before that, okay? You're passing kids along through a system and you're expecting them to get what they need. It's not going to happen. And you can't blame teachers either, because teachers, our hands are forced. And you can't blame parents, because parents actually don't even know what's really going on in the school system. Stop blaming COVID.
But something deeper was happening than just these test scores. Something was happening to attention itself. You've probably at some point in your life heard the statistic that humans have a shorter attention span than goldfish. Well, that statistic is complete phooey. I poo-poo that statistic. It's not right. As it turns out, that statistic is completely and fully made up, allegedly. It actually came from a Microsoft report that cited a website called Statistic Brain, which cited no actual research. Multiple journalists have tried to trace the source and found nothing. Also, maybe this is just me, and again, my silly little dumb goofy brain, But do we actually have a way to accurately measure a goldfish's attention span? Like, is that something we can do? Because as far as I know, goldfish aren't really known for filling out surveys. I haven't seen them do that. But speaking about attention and all of that, here's what is true. Attention isn't shrinking, it's fragmenting. Cognitive neuroscientist Marianne Wolf, author of Reader Come Home, has spent decades studying what she calls the reading brain. And her research shows something that's pretty interesting. It's pretty fascinating. It shows that reading isn't natural. There's no gene for literacy. The brain has to be trained over years to do something it wasn't designed to do. So for all of you people out there who don't read and who pride themselves in not reading, congratulations in leaning into your natural instinct. I applaud that. I applaud getting in touch with yourself. That's very holistic medicine of you. But yeah, reading requires a level of sustained attention, working memory, and the ability to hold ambiguity while you wait for a resolution. It requires what Wolf calls deep reading. The slow, contemplative processing that allows us to understand complex ideas and, crucially, to develop empathy. Now think about what all the kids are doing nowadays, how they're all on their little TikToks watching short form content, and think about what this short form content trains. Novelty scanning, dopamine seeking, rapid context switching, the ability to process surface level information very quickly and then move on to the next thing. And I mean, I guess in some kind of way, these maybe could be useful skills. I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head where a person with a 3.27 second long attention span would be beneficial. I can't think of a single thing like that, but I'm sure there is something. There's something out there, like taking out the trash, maybe. Maybe they're good at that. I don't know. So I'm not saying that those things are completely useless, even though I haven't found something that says the opposite. But what I am saying is that process, those things you learn, are completely different than what you get from reading. Basically, we trained kids on 15-second long brain rot videos and then handed them Frankenstein. And the data actually backs this up. Common Sense Media reports that tweens now spend an average of 5.5 hours a day on screens for entertainment. And teens, they spend over 8 hours a day on screens for entertainment. Meanwhile, the percentage of students who wrote long answers more than 5 times a year decreased between 2022 and 2024. So kids are consuming more content than they ever have before, but they're not processing it as deeply. And while one of my favorite hobbies in the whole world is blaming TikTok for things, in this case, it's not quite the whole story. There's a podcast called Sold a Story that went viral a few years ago. It documented something called the Reading Wars, decades of debate about how to teach kids to read. For years, many schools used an approach to literacy called balanced literacy, which de-emphasized phonics, the explicit teaching of letter-sound relationships, in favor of encouraging kids to guess words from context and pictures, which in my humble opinion, I feel like my reading skills drastically declined even just from hearing that suggestion. That sounds so not good. Like, I hear that and immediately think that does not sound good.
The idea was for them to see the same words over and over again and memorize them.
And the problem with that is that extensive research shows that balanced literacy doesn't work. The science of reading movement, backed by cognitive neuroscience, has demonstrated that explicit, systematic phonics instruction is more effective, especially for people who struggle to read. And now many schools are switching back to the whole phonics system, but it's kind of too late in a sense because so many kids are stuck in this old way of teaching. They're already stuck with that foundation. So I think we're gonna have like a 15-year range of people who just can't read and who can't comprehend anything. But it's okay because we probably can just corral a bunch of them up and have them push rocks or something. It might be fun to watch. There's also the educational tech explosion. During the pandemic, schools were pretty much forced to adopt these all new ways of using tech and all these new educational tech tools, tablets, apps, learning platforms, and the evidence on whether these actually improve literacy is mixed at best. It's not great. Studies show that students comprehend better from physical books than they do screens, that handwriting activates different parts of the brain than typing, that the very devices meant to help kids learn may be training their brains in the opposite direction. So no, it's not just TikTok that's causing this, it's curriculum, it's institutional decision. It's a system that was already struggling, hit with a pandemic, and then you add in a bunch of devices that people don't know how to use. Not a great mixture. That's not a great recipe. Really, it just sounds like these kids got the mega uppercut of bad literacy decisions. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be alarmist about this. I don't think it's destroying our society. I don't think we're gonna collapse and vanish into thin air, even though one day we might have an iPad kid president. But what I am trying to talk about is what literacy actually connects to. Students who can't read proficiently by 3rd grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. 70% of incarcerated adults can't read at a 4th grade level. 85% of juveniles who interact with the court system are functionally illiterate. High school dropouts are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested than graduates. And beyond just those statistics, there's something that's a little bit harder to measure, and that's critical thinking. The ability to evaluate sources, to distinguish good arguments from bad ones, to recognize manipulation. Deep reading, the kind that Marianne Wolf talks about, isn't just about processing words. It's about building the cognitive infrastructure for deeper thoughts. So in a sense, I think it's fair to say that reading isn't just a school subject, but it's critical infrastructure for participating in society at a functional and deeper level. And right now, that infrastructure is cracking. But there might be good news. You may or may not know this, but our brains are plastic. And I'm not talking about the plastic like what Barbie dolls are made out of. I'm saying that they're easily shaped and molded. Researchers at the University of Washington gave struggling readers an intensive 8-week tutoring program. They did MRI scans before and after, and what they found was pretty cool, actually. They found that the neural circuitry of the people they tutored actually strengthened. The white matter tracts that connect the language and vision centers of the brain showed measurable changes. 8 weeks, that's all it took. It only took 8 weeks to start seeing physical changes in people's brains. So in 2 weeks, they went from boulder pushers to that galaxy brain meme. Other research shows that structured literacy programs based on the science of reading can close skill gaps significantly, that screen time reduction improves attention, and that physical books outperform digital ones for comprehension. So while many brains today, specifically Gen Alpha brains, may be trained to think on a quick surface level, they can be retrained to think on a deeper level. So it's not completely hopeless. We can change brains, but it actually requires us to try. Which, while looking through this research and hearing what other people had to say, there is a word that I feel like kind of came up a lot. Maybe not this word directly, but pretty much this word, and that is friction. Reading has friction. It's slow. It requires effort. You have to hold ideas in your head while you wait for payoff. And in doing that, you have to tolerate one of the worst things known to mankind: boredom. And we've spent the last decade removing friction from everything. One-click ordering, infinite scrolls, skip intro, whatever this TikTok is. The entire attention economy is based on eliminating the space between wanting something and getting it. But friction is where reading lives. Friction is where learning lives. Friction is where deep thought lives. So maybe one of the easiest solutions to this whole reading crisis is actually just to stop giving kids a